Welcome to another edition of Living with Purpose. And today I have Erica Barnhart, who is a faculty member at the Evans School for Public Policy and Governance. But more importantly, she is a co-troublemaker with me, where we try and get into good trouble wherever we go. And her focus simply has been on empowering leaders by building their self-confidence in the way they show up authentically. So please welcome Erica Barnhart to Living with Purpose. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Making some more good trouble with you.
Yes. So how did you become a troublemaker?
If my parents were here, they would probably say she's always been a little bit of a troublemaker. I will say, and I'm saying this very purposely, knowing that you invite people to say yes to things. I mean, we can come back to that. But I grew up, had an early phase where I really thought that I wanted to go to Hollywood and that I was going to be a Hollywood star, clearly. That faded pretty early. Once I gave up on that, I assumed that I would be a lawyer and very specific. I worked as a paralegal, blah, blah, blah. And then working as a paralegal made me realize I didn't really want to be a lawyer. And then it was a series of sort of happenstance. I ended up being at a contract paralegal company for a while. Then I moved back up to Canada, and I ended up being the associate director for the commerce undergraduate programs at the University of British Columbia because somebody thought I could do it. Did I have the skills? Not really, Avatar. So it was just an interesting thing. And then it really was a lot of people, I would say, seeing what I couldn't see yet in myself and giving me the opportunity to do things.
I want you to actually go back. Talk about where did you grow up, the environment in which you grew up, siblings, what are some good trouble you got into there? And then why did Hollywood become something that's pretty young? Yeah, sure. But these are formative things, right?
They are formative.
It's very interesting to me that you actually said you wanted to be a Hollywood star. In some ways, what you are doing now is actually making other people become stars. Mm-hmm. So it's a very interesting.
Well, that's interesting. I thought about it that way.
Early ways in which certain things actually come with us. So I want you to kind of go back in.
I was born in Vancouver, Canada, to American parents. My dad was a professor at UBC, so I happened to be born there at that period of time. And I lived there till I was 8, which means that I did preschool, kindergarten, grades 1 and 2 in French immersion. So when I moved from Canada to the United States between grades 2 and 3, I spoke English because we spoke English at home, but I could only read and write French, as you do in elementary school. So I actually had to learn how to read and write French at grade level in that summer that we moved. And that ended up being really formative for me, that piece of being a little different and knowing that I needed to having a sense that I needed to catch up in this one regard, left a pretty big imprint. So people ask how I got so sort of fascinated with language and words. It came out of reading and writing French first, and then kind of having this experience of having to move. From a very young age, I loved to sing, loved singing. I don't really sing much anymore, but as a kid, I was always singing. I was in, every choir you could point at. I was in that choir, and I did that. And then I got into theater and did a lot of regular theater and musical theater. Yeah, it was a big part of who I was and what I did all the way through high school. And then, as often happens, what you did in high school, it doesn't carry with you in the same specific way. But the love of language, and I love public speaking. We share this sort of odd little quirk where it doesn't faze us to be in front of large groups of people. And I think I know that came from being in front of people from a really young age. Yeah.
Yeah. My youngest kid actually did theater and drama in school from a very early age, and he has absolutely no fear of speaking on any topic.
Yeah. The worst that's going to happen is probably happened for me. It's not going to get worse. I had some weird stuff happen.
Yeah. So theater is the connection to Hollywood. Mm-hmm. But then that changed.
So, it was sort of like gosh, that would be neat. Did I ever actively pursue this in any way? No. There was no stint where I moved there and I tried to make it go. I just thought that would be really cool. But I grew up in a family where logic was and still is our love language. And, becoming a Hollywood starlet wasn't real practical. So it was a little like, that wasn't really going to happen. But I stuck with that love of language, and which, a lot of law is really, how are you going to use language to influence in various ways? I mean, that really has been the through line for me and eventually that I honed that a bit more to focus on how can I help others use words to make the world a better place. So whether or not it was them as leaders or organizations, it was with that purpose, the express intent of how do I use what I know about words and language in a way that's going to benefit others.
So law, paralegal, and then somehow moved to more in the education, but really not in an educational environment.
Yeah.
And that was back in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that journey from there.
I did that for a few years, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I was pretty sure I would want an advanced degree. And so I came back down to the University of Washington and got my master's in public administration from the Evans School, where we are now both faculty. And again, I went through the whole degree, and it was great. Some people come in with they want to become a policy analyst, or they, very explicit. And I did about 30% of my degree in entrepreneurship in the business school. And when I got out, I went to work, and this is where our paths first crossed, for a startup social enterprise nonprofit called NPower, which put technology know-how into the hands of nonprofits. So I was their director of communications and fundraising and advancement. So at the time, one Avtar Bacha was head of philanthropy for Microsoft. And then I was there for a few years, so for 3 or so years, and had my first kid, and sort of took some time off and was just taking on projects, as they came. And I thought I would just do that because I wanted to be home with her sort of substantively. And she was little. And then the projects kept coming. And then after 3 or 4 years, I was like, I think that I should make this legit what I do. So again, I didn't set out to be consultant or a coach or any of these things. That's just sort of the path that revealed itself. And then I got asked to teach at the University of Washington. So I started teaching the nonprofit certificate, communications, taught one course. And then over the sort of 5 to 6 years, they just kept asking me to teach more things. And I kept saying yes. And eventually that turned into me being on faculty. And that was about 15 years ago or so.
But you also headed the Nancy
Bell Evans. Yeah. So after I've been teaching for a little while, and then the dean asked me, the former dean asked me to direct the Nancy Bell Evans Center on Nonprofits and Philanthropy.
And talk a little bit about that, this whole world of how you think about the nonprofit sector, the philanthropy sector, social entrepreneurship, leadership, importance of words, they all kind of somehow mesh together in this very interesting way in which you now show up. A bit about that work, because I thought that was kind of helped shape, at least for me, put a marker for the Evans School that differentiated it from other institutions.
That's interesting. There are definitely some distinctions between nonprofits, foundations, or philanthropy, social enterprises. But as you well know, and as your listeners know, all roads lead back to impact, right? Into multiple bottom lines. And so I've always said, I actually don't care about tax status very much. I care about your volition to make, whether or not you have the volition to make the world a better place. And that's kind of my litmus for whether or not I'm going to, partner with an individual or an organization. And when I was heading up the Nancy Bell Evans Center, we were kind of trying to figure out, what is the unique value proposition of a center within higher ed in that space, mindful of how much good work it was being done. And so for a period of time, we were focusing, I would say the most high impact thing we did while I was there, and we did we did all manner of things. We, brought in groups of philanthropists from other countries and helped them understand how philanthropy operates here in the United States. But we did research. And when COVID hit, we ended up doing a big body of research, which turned into a report about the impact of COVID on nonprofits in Washington State. And the impact of that was significant because it gave nonprofits a tool to be able to say to foundations like, listen, these are people who research things, professionally. And they are saying, none of this was new, by the way. So anyone who's within a nonprofit is going to be like, oh my God, we've been saying that for years. And it's even more true now. Multi-year, unrestricted funding, and don't ask for a lot of reports and reporting unless you're going to actively fund the evaluation part of things. But it did give us an opportunity to put a stake in the ground around that and really say that this truly is what nonprofits need right now. And when we had the caveat in that, that is the type of funding that is most beneficial to organizations. And again, for me in that, because there was a team that, was doing the research, one of our PhD students, a few of the PhD students did the heavy lifting on the analysis and the research itself. But what I was and I'm always curious about is what's the role of language in all of it, right? So if words shape our world, which they really do, right? Our thoughts become our beliefs become our actions are what create our reality. But it all goes back to what are the words in, my mind, your listeners' minds, and how over time does that shape reality? And so if we stick with this report, what did it mean to foundations? What does unrestricted mean? What does multi-year mean? Are we speaking the same language around this? For me, that is the organizing principle of my work, is around what is the piece around language and words, whether or not it's leadership or nonprofits or, I've worked with plenty of for-profits as well. That's what continues to pique my interest.
So let's talk a little bit about the importance of words. I mean, the work that was done, the seminal work by the Amy Curry that talked about women and how they show up.
Mm-hmm. Body language.
The body language piece. You are essentially actually saying that in addition to that, you also need a verbal language to show up effectively.
So I would say externally, you need the both, right? So it is how you show up. It's your body language. Amy's work is fantastic around that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's how you speak. And that's a lot of the work that I've done with leaders is, how do you speak with confidence and clarity? But I think what gets overlooked and where I'm spending more and more time, what precedes that. So what are you telling yourself before you show up? And how is that self-talk, either consciously or subconsciously, because a lot of it's subconsciously, how is that showing up in how you're showing up? So if you've been telling yourself for, a story for many years about, let's pick a common one, I'm not a good public speaker. It's one of the most common things that people think about themselves. So if that's a story that you have, showing up with confidence is much more challenging.
Good.
Right? It's much more challenging. So that's the piece that I'm spending a lot of time with these days.
And what are you finding?
I am finding that we don't talk enough about our self-talk, right? So 92% of people have self-talk. There are apparently 8% of people who have no self-talk, which I find fascinating. But the vast majority of people are talking to themselves a ton. Some of that is conscious. A lot of it is subconscious or unconscious, depending on which you prefer. And it gets super interesting when you know the speed at which we're saying things to ourselves. So about an hour-long talk on average in English is about 9,000 words. Okay, just for a point of reference, 9,000 words. We go through about 4,000 words per minute in our minds.
Wow.
4,000 words per minute. So about every, we're compressing an hour-long verbal, right, external words into 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about The fact that a lot of what we tell ourselves is what's deemed negative, we'll come back to that. I don't love that term, but for the sake of the conversation, is negative. What we are in essence doing is reinforcing negative stories that we have about ourselves, negative beliefs in a very fast clip.
Mm.
And these stories are things that we start telling ourselves when we're quite young, right? And because the stories that we tell ourselves when we're young are about safety, they're about protection. Our prefrontal cortex, where we have executive function, doesn't come online till much later. And so this is baked into who we are at a very young age. And then it kind of runs on autopilot. For most people, it's like, well, that's, there it is. And what's super interesting, and what I say to people is like, your self-talk isn't broken. It's out of date.
Mm.
It needs to be updated. Just like this is a picture of me. Can you see it? Oh, wait. I want to get this in. Okay, there I am.
Yeah.
I was 4. Look how cute I was. Look at my outfit.
Yeah.
I loved this outfit. I loved this outfit. I think my mom had to burn it. But I'm not wearing that outfit now because that would look super goofy. It's not current. It's not appropriate, right? Appropriate is maybe a harsh word, but it's not current. It doesn't match who I am today.
Right.
And we do this pretty naturally, right? We update external things and how we talk, to go back to body language. I don't speak the way I did then.
Yeah.
We don't do the same for our self-talk. And so then we end up with this sort of feeling like our self-talk is running us. It's in charge of us. I can't do anything about it. And that's partially because we're given a lot of bad advice, right? So now if you look at the advice that's given, it's like, well, if you have negative self-talk, what do? You counter it with positive self-talk. Well, that doesn't work. It doesn't sustain. And so anybody who's tried it is like, well, I tried it and I can't do it. It's like, right, because you were given bad advice. It's not a switch you can split,
yeah.
Right? Your subconscious mind is going to be like, try that for a bit. Try that. Okay, I'll wait. I'll wait until you revert, because it will feel it's change. It's going to feel uncomfortable. And if it's the opposite, that's too far, too fast.
Right.
So that's what I find. That's a few of the things I find. So the work that, I'm doing, and the message that I really hope your listeners will hear is their self-talk isn't broken. It has served them in some way, right? So we don't want to actually banish it or make it bad. We're not going to shame and blame the self-talk. Instead, we're going to wonder, what do I kind of want to be telling myself, and how can I nudge my self-talk, right? So the method is, notice it. Is that serving me? Is it helpful or harmful, right? Just get curious. And then, and this part's really important, you nope. So most people can't go from this negative to positive. What you're going to do is nope any self-talk that you're like, that's not great for me right now. It's either harmful or, it's not what I want to be thinking about. So you just nope it. Nope. And the beauty of nope is that it has like this playful nature to it. So it keeps us out of that propensity for shame and blame. And then you nudge. So it's notice, nope, and nudge. And the nudging is really important. It's just like, what can I say that's a little bit kinder? So if we stick with this public speaking example, because I could pretty much bet that a lot of listeners, because they're human, might have an aversion to public speaking, which is why it's a handy one. You might go from saying like an unhelpful version of this would be, I'm a terrible public speaker. Terrible public speaker. And your subconscious, because it wants to find patterns, will then be like, yeah. Remember that time? Remember all the times that it didn't go well? It's not going to notice or remind you of all the times it went just fine.
Correct.
Which is going to be the vast majority of times. It's just going to remind you of the negative. So to go from I'm a terrible public speaker to I'm an amazing public speaker doesn't really work. But you might say, are there any times when I felt okay about my public speaking? Just okay. And then you think about those times. And what can I say to myself? Sometimes I'm a terrible public speaker. That would be a nudge. Sometimes I'm a terrible public speaker. But that opens the door to, what about the other times? Well, sometimes I've done okay. Well, that's interesting, right? And you just keep doing that. And you notice how it feels in your body to say these just slightly different things. It's a nudging, not a swap out.
This is very fascinating. And for our readers to kind of just iterate these three words that Erica said very quickly, which I just want to emphasize on, is the ability to notice. And the ability to notice also takes time to build in yourself.
It's a practice.
It's a practice because most of the time we feel we are noticing, but we are actually not. Because we are just seeing things. We are actually not noticing it. So how do we kind of build that practice to notice things where it takes more than just a cursory look. It takes a moment or two for it to sink in.
Yeah. So we have something called the reticular activating system. It's also a very old part of our brain. Its job is to let us know what's important. And it also hones our attention. So it is the thing, I don't know if you've had this experience of walking through the airport and there's so much background noise and you don't notice most of it. But if your name is called over the louds, or all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that's so loud.
Yeah.
It's not any louder. It's loud to you because your name matters to you because that keeps you safe. And so you can engage your reticular activating system in this clever way. All listeners have to do is say to themselves, I want to start noticing. I want to start noticing what my thoughts are. Just one a day. One time a day, I want to notice.
Yeah.
By definition of inviting yourself to do it, you will start noticing. And I would say that would just be the first thing. And this is where I really, the language of negative and positive, I encourage people to get away from if you can, because of the loop that it creates. So if somebody says, oh, you notice your self-talk, what do you notice about it? It's negative. Well, then you feel negative about having negative self-talk because you're not supposed to have negative self-talk, right? So it's like this whole thing. So when you're ready, you notice it. And that's why the question, is this helpful or harmful? On a continuum.
Right.
If I'm thinking about a continuum of 1 to 10, with 10 being super helpful, 1 being really harmful, where is this thought on that continuum? Mm-hmm. That's a much more actionable and helpful way to be thinking about it, right? And then you were in choice about your self-talk. Right. And the other thing I want to say to people is they have all the tools they need to turn their self-talk into a source of power because they have language already. Whatever language people speak, and maybe they speak multiple languages, right? Whatever your favorite language is, it's usually what your self-talk is in. So you have that at your disposal already. You know how to do this. It's a matter of using the tool differently than you have.
This is so fascinating. So, just as a reminder, notice, nudge. And nudging, I also believe, is actually very important because sometimes actually nudge is a very interesting word because it's not forceful. It's a very slight shift which allows you to course correct. So it allows you to both notice and act. So let's shift a little bit to purpose and how, with all of this work that you're doing, how does purpose show up? Why is that important for you? And how have you been able to show up with purpose, especially when times get tough? And you have gone through some reasonably interesting time.
Yes, I have. My purpose, like I said, both personally, obviously, substantively, professionally, but also personally, how can we use words to make the world a better place? And so I come back to purpose when I'm making any decision really about, is that in my best and highest purpose? And sometimes the answer is, maybe not to the extent that I want, but it is a litmus through which I make my decisions. And, I was thinking about this recently, Avatar. I've had an increasing number of friends who are now retiring, relatively young because they've had careers in corporate. And I've been thinking a lot about purpose because their work gave them structure. And that's different than purpose.
Yes.
And so now they're like, but what's my purpose? Right? And I'm not retiring anytime soon. So I will not be purposely testing this theory. Others are.
Send them my way.
I mean, maybe I'm kidding myself. I would do different things with my day. So I don't also have the luxury of retiring, but I was in choice about having a career that did feel purposeful to me.
Yeah.
And a life that feels very purposeful. And I mean, this did get reinforced for listeners. I lost my husband to mental illness, and the way that language showed up for him, I witnessed firsthand that decline. And eventually his complete disassociation between reality and words. The words that he was telling himself were real. They did not match reality. And that was an extreme case. But that happens for all of us, right? Like, we really need to be careful about the stories we tell ourselves and the extent to which they're like real versus objectively. Is that, is it real? And that did... I was always focused on words, but that certainly oriented me even more towards the self-talk being kind of the latest way, which I'm really curious about how we can use words, which I view, as a resource that we have. On average, we go through 15,000 words a day. How are we using those words? Are we using them wisely? Are we using them to be in alignment with purpose? Is, something I think about kind of day in and day out, basically.
So let's end by your sharing with us your one golden nugget, piece of wisdom that you would like to share with our listeners.
I will reiterate and then add something. Your self-talk is not broken. It is out of date, and you can update it, and you have the resources you need to do that. And you might need some extra support, and that's fine. Let me just say that too. I'm very pro-therapy. All of us need support. But at a fundamental level, you have these resources. So this resource being words. And I would invite readers, my golden nugget is that words matter because they are matter. So every word has its own energy. That's why this word nope, that's a very different energy than no.
Yeah.
My golden nugget is it's an invitation to listeners to be thinking about how am I, what's my energy now? How am I feeling now? How do I want to feel? So that I can take the action I want to, and what are the energetic stepping stones from here to there? What's the nudge? And just be so kind to yourselves as you're doing it, which is really hard, but it's a much lovelier way to live. And no one gets to tell you what your self-talk should be. No one. So don't give away that power. Really would love for people to stop giving away that power and to reclaim it for themselves in a way that serves them.
Erika, thank you very much. Again, these, you have the power. It's your self-power. Use it. These words of noticing, the way to kind of think about no and nudging are just very interesting ways that kind of helps you build your own energy. And words have their own energy. And if you use it effectively, it can actually help build your purpose. Because purpose is your energy that comes from your strengths and your values. So the more you think about your strengths, the more you think about your values, it kind of gives you that energy to continuously move forward. Purpose, as I've always said, that renewable sense of energy that continues to drive humanity and us forward. You've now got some insights on how you may be able to do it through these ways of noticing, nudging, being no as your anchor. So with that, I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. And Erika, thank you so very much for being part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.